We all have that moment when a friend says something and we feel it, the tension, the discomfort, the instant reaction forming in our minds. We don't like what they said, we don't agree, and suddenly we're standing at a crossroads. Do we engage? Do we walk away? Do we risk the friendship over one conversation? Friendship is one of the most valuable relationships we can have in life, and yet so many of us mistakenly believe that agreeing all the time is what keeps friendship strong. We think that if we see eye to eye on everything, our bond will remain unshaken. But true friendship is not about avoiding disagreement. It's about knowing that even when we don't see things the same way, the foundation of trust, respect, and care remains intact. In fact, disagreements, when handled correctly, can be one of the strongest indicators of a healthy and meaningful friendship. When two people are truly close, they feel safe enough to express their real thoughts, even when those thoughts might be unpopular or different from the other person's perspective. This kind of honesty is only possible in relationships where trust has been built over time. If someone constantly agrees with us just to keep the peace or avoid an uncomfortable conversation, it doesn't necessarily mean they respect us. It might mean they fear conflict more than they value honesty. And a friendship built on fear of confrontation is not as strong as one built on mutual understanding. Imagine a friendship where every conversation is simply an exchange of agreement. At first, it might feel nice to always be validated, to have someone nod along to every opinion we express. But over time, that kind of relationship can start to feel shallow. We might start to wonder, are they really being honest with me? Do they actually agree, or are they just avoiding conflict? The best friendships are those in which both people feel free to be themselves completely, without worrying that a difference in opinion will threaten the relationship. Disagreements are not signs of weakness. They are signs of authenticity. They show that two people are willing to bring their full selves into the relationship, rather than filtering their thoughts just to maintain a surface-level sense of harmony. Real friends challenge each other. They push each other to see different perspectives, to think critically, and to grow. If we only surround ourselves with people who echo our own beliefs, we risk stagnation. But when we allow space for differing opinions, we open the door to deeper conversations, stronger connections, and personal growth. The way we handle disagreements in a friendship also says a lot about the strength of the bond. If a minor disagreement leads to a falling out, it might indicate that the relationship was fragile to begin with. On the other hand, when friends can navigate a tough conversation, express differing opinions, and still walk away respecting and valuing each other, that is a sign of maturity and depth. In many cases, working through disagreements actually strengthens a friendship. It shows that the relationship is resilient enough to withstand challenges, and that both people are invested enough to communicate honestly rather than simply walk away when things get tough. This is not to say that every disagreement will be easy. There will be moments of frustration, and sometimes emotions will run high. But when both friends approach the conversation with the mindset that their relationship is more important than any single argument, they create a space where differences can be explored without causing lasting damage. A disagreement does not have to be a battle. It can be a bridge, a way to understand each other better, to see the world through another lens, and to strengthen the bond between two people. What ultimately defines a strong friendship is not how much two people agree, but how well they handle the moments when they don't. If we can learn to see disagreements not as threats, but as opportunities for deeper connection, we begin to build relationships that are based on real trust, respect, and authenticity. True friendship is not about being the same. It's about valuing each other, even in our differences. And that is what makes a relationship truly unbreakable. When we enter a disagreement, our natural instinct is often to prove that we are right. We want to make our point clearly, counter the other person's arguments, and walk away feeling like we have won the conversation. But if winning is our goal, we have already lost something far more important: the opportunity to understand. Real conversations are not about competition, they are about connection. If we shift our mindset from trying to win an argument to genuinely trying to understand the other person, we not only preserve our relationships, but also create room for growth and deeper connection. One of the biggest mistakes we make in disagreements is assuming that our perspective is the only correct one. We become so focused on defending our own viewpoint that we stop listening. Instead of hearing what the other person is really saying, we listen just enough to prepare our next counter-argument. This turns the conversation into a battle rather than a discussion. But true understanding requires us to go beyond our own perspective. It asks us to step into the other person's shoes and consider why they see things the way they do. Understanding does not mean agreement. It is possible to fully grasp someone else's perspective and still hold a different opinion. But when we take the time to listen, really listen, we begin to see that most disagreements are not just about facts, but about experiences, values, and emotions. Everyone's beliefs and opinions are shaped by their background, their struggles, and their personal journey. When we recognize this, we stop viewing disagreements as black and white conflicts and start seeing them as opportunities to learn more about each other. Another danger of focusing on winning is that it often leads to damaging communication. When we argue just to win, we may become dismissive, sarcastic, or even aggressive. We might interrupt, raise our voices, or use personal attacks, all in an attempt to prove that we are right. But these tactics rarely change someone's mind. In fact, they usually do the opposite. They make the other person more defensive, more entrenched in their position, and less willing to engage in an open discussion. The harder we push, the less they listen. When we prioritize understanding, instead, we create a different dynamic. We replace defensiveness with curiosity. Instead of saying you're wrong, we ask, why do you see it that way? Instead of shutting the other person down, we invite them to share more. This kind of approach fosters trust and respect, even in difficult conversations. It shows that we value the person more than just proving a point. A powerful way to shift our mindset is to remind ourselves that every disagreement is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to see a different perspective, to challenge our own assumptions, and to strengthen our ability to communicate with empathy. Even if we walk away without changing our stance, we will have gained insight into how someone else thinks and feels. And sometimes in the process of trying to understand another person, we find that our own views evolve. This approach is especially important in friendships and close relationships. If we treat every disagreement as a battle to be won, we risk damaging the very connections we care about. No one likes to feel unheard or dismissed. But when we make the other person feel valued and respected, even in disagreement, we reinforce the bond between us. At the end of the day, the strongest relationships are not built on agreement, but on mutual respect and the willingness to engage in honest, thoughtful conversations. The real victory in any disagreement is not about proving ourselves right, it is about deepening our understanding of each other, and that kind of victory lasts far longer than any argument ever could. In most conversations, especially when disagreements arise, people don't truly listen. They hear words, they catch key phrases, but they are not really absorbing what the other person is saying. Instead, they are busy preparing their response, crafting their counter-argument, and waiting for their turn to speak. This is not listening, it's just waiting. And when we approach conversations this way, we miss the opportunity to genuinely understand the person in front of us. Listening to learn, rather than just to respond, requires a shift in mindset. Instead of seeing a disagreement as a debate where we must prove our point, we should see it as a chance to gain insight into another person's perspective. Every opinion, belief, or argument someone presents comes from a deeper place shaped by their experiences, values, and emotions. If we only listen at the surface level, we will never fully grasp why they think the way they do. But if we listen with the intent to understand, we allow ourselves to connect on a much deeper level. One of the biggest obstacles to true listening is the natural human desire to be right. When we hear something that challenges our beliefs, our instinct is to immediately defend our position. We stop listening and start mentally preparing our response, searching for flaws in the other person's logic and waiting for a moment to jump in. But in doing so, we shut down the possibility of real dialogue. Instead of engaging with an open mind, we create an invisible wall between ourselves and the other person, making it nearly impossible to have a meaningful conversation. The problem with this approach is that it turns discussions into competitions. If two people are only listening to respond, neither of them is actually hearing the other. The conversation becomes a series of statements rather than an exchange of ideas. And when people don't feel heard, they become frustrated, defensive, or even disengaged. No one wants to feel like they are talking to a wall. And when we fail to listen, that's exactly how we make others feel. On the other hand, when we make the effort to listen with genuine curiosity, everything changes. Instead of interrupting or formulating a rebuttal, we focus entirely on what the other person is saying. We ask questions not to trap them or prove a point, but to gain clarity. We pay attention not just to their words, but to their emotions, their tone, and the underlying message they are trying to communicate. This kind of listening creates an environment of trust where both people feel safe enough to be honest. One of the most powerful things we can do in a conversation is to repeat back what we think we heard and ask for confirmation. Simple phrases like, "So what you're saying is," or "It sounds like you feel," can make a huge difference. It shows the other person that we are not just hearing their words, but actually trying to understand their meaning. And in many cases, when people feel truly heard, they become more open to hearing us in return. True listening also requires patience. Sometimes people struggle to articulate their thoughts clearly, and we might be tempted to jump in and correct them. But when we allow them the space to express themselves fully, we often discover insights we would have missed if we had rushed to respond. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it can also be powerful, giving both sides a moment to reflect before reacting. At its core, listening to learn is about respect. It is about valuing another person's thoughts and feelings enough to give them our full attention. It is about setting aside our ego, our need to be right, and our urge to respond quickly in favor of truly engaging with another human being. And when we do this, we don't just improve our conversations, we strengthen our relationships, deepen our understanding, and create space for real connection. Disagreements are a natural part of any relationship, and with them often come strong emotions. When we feel passionately about something, when our values, beliefs, or experiences are challenged, it is almost inevitable that emotions will rise. Frustration, anger, disappointment, even hurt can surface in the middle of a difficult conversation. This is completely normal, but while emotions will always be present, they do not have to control how we respond. Self-awareness, patience, and intentional communication allow us to handle these moments with respect rather than letting emotions take over and turn a discussion into an argument. The challenge is that when emotions run high, our instinct is often to react immediately. We feel the urge to defend ourselves, to prove a point, or to push back against what we perceive as a challenge or an attack. In these moments, our ability to think clearly and listen effectively can become clouded. We may say things we don't mean, raise our voices, or respond in ways that escalate the situation rather than move it toward resolution. But the truth is, reacting impulsively rarely leads to meaningful understanding. It often makes the other person defensive, pushing both sides further apart rather than bringing them closer to common ground. The key is self-awareness. Recognizing when our emotions are taking over is the first step in regaining control. When we feel anger building, when we sense frustration rising, we have a choice. We can let those emotions dictate our words and actions, or we can take a step back and pause. This pause is powerful. It gives us the space to breathe, to collect our thoughts, and to choose how we want to engage rather than simply reacting on impulse. A moment of intentional silence, even a deep breath, can prevent a conversation from spiraling into something destructive. One of the most effective ways to maintain control in emotional moments is to focus on listening rather than just preparing to respond. When we shift our attention from defending our own viewpoint to genuinely understanding the other person, it helps to calm our emotions. We begin to see the person behind the disagreement rather than just the disagreement itself. Instead of assuming the worst about their intentions, we can remind ourselves that they too are human, shaped by their own experiences, values, and emotions. This perspective helps to keep the conversation constructive rather than combative. It is also important to remember that just because we feel strongly about something does not mean we have to respond immediately. Sometimes the best thing we can do is step away from the conversation and revisit it later when emotions have settled. There is nothing wrong with saying, "I need a moment to think about this," or "Let's come back to this when we're both in a better place to talk." Giving ourselves and the other person time to process can lead to a much more thoughtful and productive discussion. Another important aspect of emotional control is recognizing the power of tone and body language. Even when we are trying to stay calm, our frustration can show in the way we speak or in our facial expressions. A sarcastic tone, an eye roll, or crossing our arms defensively can communicate hostility, even if our words are measured. Being mindful of how we present ourselves physically can make a significant difference in keeping a conversation respectful and open. None of this means we should suppress our emotions or pretend we don't feel strongly about something. Emotions are valid, and they can provide valuable insight into what truly matters to us. However, allowing emotions to dictate our behavior without thought can damage relationships and prevent meaningful dialogue. The goal is not to eliminate emotions, but to manage them in a way that allows us to communicate effectively and respectfully. At the heart of every disagreement is an opportunity to strengthen a relationship, to gain a new perspective, and to practice patience and understanding. When we learn to recognize and regulate our emotions in difficult conversations, we create space for real connection. We show the people around us that we value them, not just when things are easy, but even in the moments of tension and disagreement. And in doing so, we build relationships that are based not on avoidance of conflict, but on trust, respect, and the ability to navigate difficult moments together. Friendship is built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. It is one of the most valuable relationships we can have, offering support, joy, and companionship throughout life's ups and downs. But no friendship, no matter how strong, is free from disagreements. At some point, we will see things differently from our friends, and conflicts will arise. In those moments, it is easy to get caught up in proving a point, defending our views, or feeling frustrated by our differences. But when we step back and look at the bigger picture, we realize something important. Friendship is far more valuable than any single argument. If a friendship is real, it will outlast any disagreement. And what truly matters is how we treat each other in the process. When we argue with a friend, emotions can run high. We might feel disappointed, misunderstood, or even hurt. It is natural to want to be right, especially when the issue at hand is something we feel strongly about. But the danger is when we let the argument become bigger than the friendship itself. When we start seeing the disagreement as more important than the person we are disagreeing with, that is when friendships suffer. If we become so focused on winning that we forget to be kind, patient, and respectful, we risk doing real damage to the relationship. A strong friendship is not defined by the absence of conflict, but by how we handle it. Disagreements do not have to weaken a bond. In fact, they can strengthen it if approached with care. When two people can openly share different opinions and still maintain respect for each other, it deepens the trust between them. It shows that the friendship is built on something deeper than just agreement. It is built on acceptance, understanding, and the ability to navigate challenges together. One of the most important things to remember during a disagreement is perspective. In the heat of the moment, an argument might feel like the most important thing in the world. But if we take a step back, we can ask ourselves, will this disagreement matter in a week, a month, a year? Most of the time, the answer is no. Friendships last for years, sometimes a lifetime. One disagreement, no matter how intense, is just a small moment in the bigger story of the relationship. When we keep that perspective, we realize that preserving the friendship is far more important than winning the argument. This does not mean we have to suppress our opinions or avoid difficult conversations. Honest friendships allow space for open discussions, even when those discussions are uncomfortable. But there is a difference between expressing our thoughts and attacking the other person. It is possible to disagree while still showing kindness, to debate while still listening, and to stand firm in our beliefs without dismissing the other person's perspective. At the end of a disagreement, what matters most is how we treated each other. Did we listen with an open mind? Did we speak with kindness? Did we prioritize understanding over proving a point? The way we handle conflict determines whether a friendship grows stronger or starts to fade. When we approach disagreements with care, we send the message that our bond is more important than our differences. Sometimes, after a disagreement, it helps to take a moment to reconnect, to remind ourselves and our friends why the relationship matters. A simple message, a shared laugh, or even an acknowledgement like, "I know we don't see this the same way, but I appreciate you," can go a long way in reinforcing the friendship. It shows that while we may not always agree, we will always value each other. Friendship is about more than just having the same opinions. It is about supporting each other, growing together, and accepting each other as we are. No two people will ever agree on everything, and that is okay. What truly defines a friendship is not the absence of disagreements, but the presence of respect, love, and a commitment to staying connected no matter what. In the end, the friendship itself is always more important than any single argument. Disagreements are a natural part of friendship, but they don't have to weaken our bonds. True friendship is built on respect, understanding, and the ability to navigate differences with care. If we listen to learn, separate the person from their opinion, and prioritize the relationship over being right, we create space for meaningful conversations. In the end, what matters most is not winning an argument, but ensuring that respect and connection remain intact. Real friendships will outlast disagreements as long as we choose to handle them with kindness and understanding. So the next time we find ourselves at that crossroads, faced with a disagreement that feels risky, uncomfortable, even frustrating, let's lean in. Let's listen. Let's choose respect. Because real friendships aren't built on avoiding difficult conversations, they're built on having them and having them well.